What if humanity's diversity was never the natural unfolding of history, but the result of a hidden covenant, a crown, forged in the image of the serpent, binding kings and bloodlines across the ages? The Bible speaks of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, sons of Noah, who became the roots of nations. The faithful, they are genealogical markers, a divine blueprint for the spread of humanity. But in the whispers of forbidden myth, these names are not just ancestors, they are pillars of an ancient pact, signatories in blood to a contract sealed beneath the flood. Imagine the serpent crown rising from the waters of destruction, its coils gleaming like molten fire passed from dynasty to dynasty. Each ruler who wore it claimed sovereignty not only over land but over life itself, their legitimacy written in the veins of their bloodline. From Babel's tower stretching toward heaven to the thrones of Egypt where serpents coiled on golden crowns, the symbol remains serpent wisdom and forbidden sovereignty. But what if the scattering of tongues at Babel was not punishment, but prevention? What if humanity's unity was fractured deliberately, so that no single bloodline could awaken to its full power? In this inversion, God's curse becomes empire's safeguard, and the serpent crown is left as a haunting reminder. Unity is forbidden, division is law. Tonight, we follow the forbidden current, tracing the blood that flows like a dark river from Genesis to kings crowned in serpent gold. And we ask, was humanity's destiny fragmented by divine will, scripted by a crown of rebellion? To understand the architecture of evil within the story of the serpent crown, one must first look beyond genealogies and see the pattern beneath them. The flood was not simply a cleansing of the earth, it was a reset, a ritual purge in blood. Yet from this purge, three pillars emerged: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. On the surface, they appear as patriarchs of nations, but when their lineages are traced like veins across the map of history, a hidden structure takes form. These were not merely fathers of tribes, they were foundations of a system, three currents of blood woven into one crown. Consider the aftermath of the flood. Noah plants a vineyard. Ham's curse unfolds, and suddenly, bloodline is destiny. Shem becomes associated with chosen lineage, Ham with cursed nations, Japheth with expansion. But read through an occult lens, and this is not divine distribution, it's division. Blood is being coded into hierarchy, inscribed into destiny. Unity is forbidden, fragmentation is enforced. This division is not natural, it is architectural, designed to perpetuate control through lineage itself. The Tower of Babel magnifies this architecture. Humanity, united with one language, sought to build upward to reach the heavens. Was this hubris an attempt to reclaim unity lost in the flood's aftermath? The text says God scattered them, fractured their tongues, divided their destiny. But in the shadow of forbidden myths, this scattering was not holy justice, but structural engineering. By dividing tongues and nations, the architecture of evil ensured no single bloodline could unify the serpent's crown again. Babel becomes less a punishment than a ritual fragmentation, a cosmic shattering that secures control. From that point forward, the architecture replicated itself in empire after empire. Egypt crowned its pharaohs with the uraeus serpent, symbol of divine legitimacy, coiled wisdom resting on the brow of kings. Mesopotamian rulers traced lineages back to gods and giants, claiming legitimacy through forbidden ancestry. Israelite kings were anointed with oil, a substitute for blood binding their reign to covenant. Rome wrapped its emperors in symbols of divine lineage, cloaking blood and law. Everywhere the serpent crown reappeared, not always in metal or jewel, but as idea. Rulership sanctified by bloodline, legitimacy written in veins. This architecture is not only political but metaphysical. By casting Shem's line as blessed, Ham's as cursed, Japheth's as expansive, entire civilizations were built upon invisible hierarchies. Slavery, conquest, and empire were justified as destiny written in Genesis. Yet beneath these layers lies a darker truth. Bloodline is the oldest tool of control. If rulers convince their subjects that power flows from sacred blood, rebellion becomes heresy, and obedience becomes survival. The serpent crown, then, is not merely an object, it is a system, living architecture that binds humanity through blood. Notice how this system mirrors occult patterns. In Kabbalah, the serpent encircles the tree of knowledge as both guardian and deceiver. In Babylon, the serpent dragon Tiamat is slain to establish order. In Egypt, the serpent on the crown both threatens and protects. Each myth whispers the same truth. Serpent sovereignty is both feared and revered. A double-edged symbol of forbidden wisdom and unchallengeable power. The architecture of evil thrives on this duality, turning the serpent into both curse and crown, ensuring its presence cannot be escaped. The genius of the architecture is its invisibility. Nations rise and fall, but the logic remains: legitimacy through blood. Monarchies claim divine right. Elites trace genealogies to ancient houses. Even in modern times, whispers of royal blood, sacred lineage, and chosen families echo the same architecture. The serpent crown may no longer gleam on brows of kings, but its coils tighten still, shaping belief, inheritance, hierarchy. And here lies the forbidden question. What if humanity's fragmentation was never divine punishment but deliberate design? What if Shem, Ham, and Japheth were not merely patriarchs, but locks on the same crown, ensuring no one bloodline could awaken its full power? The architecture of evil is not destruction. It is containment, division, fragmentation. Its brilliance lies in convincing humanity that its chains are providence. In this light, the serpent crown is not legend, but blueprint. It is the invisible architecture beneath nations, religions, and dynasties. The system that turns blood into destiny and unity into curse. To trace its coils is to see history not as chaos but as design, a labyrinth built of veins and sealed by rituals of power. And only by unveiling this architecture can we begin to understand how deeply its shadow falls upon us still. Symbols are not decorations, they are technologies of control. They whisper meanings beneath the skin, carrying entire systems of belief in a single image. And nowhere is this more potent than in the forbidden language of the serpent and the crown. For millennia, cultures have encoded sovereignty in coils, scales, and diadems shaped like serpents, each symbol, a cipher that says, power flows through blood, legitimacy rests on lineage, rebellion is sin. The serpent is the oldest of these symbols. In Genesis, it slithers as the bringer of forbidden knowledge, the one who awakens humanity's eyes. To the church, this figure was demonized, Satan, clothed in scales, corruption incarnate. But in older traditions, the serpent was wisdom, renewal, eternal cycle. In Egypt, the uraeus cobra crowned the pharaoh, coiled upon the brow as protector and legitimizer. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was bringer of civilization. Across Asia, Naga serpents guarded temples and thrones. The serpent as symbol always points both ways. Guardian and deceiver, curse and crown, danger and wisdom. That duality is the forbidden language. What empowers is also what enslaves. The crown, too, is more than ornament. It is a ritualized halo of legitimacy. To place a crown upon the head is not simply to adorn, but to encode. The crown whispers, "This one is chosen, set apart, marked by heaven or blood." In medieval Europe, coronation was not only political, but liturgical, crown and oil together, sealing a contract between ruler and God. Yet the serpent crown goes deeper. It implies legitimacy, not from heaven, but from hidden ancestry, from bloodline itself. It suggests the ruler does not simply rule by decree, but by blood covenant, older than any throne. Babel, too, is a symbol. In common telling, it is a tower built from pride, punished by scattering. But in symbolic reading, Babel is a monument to unity, a sigil etched in stone that attempted to bind heaven and earth. Its collapse is not merely destruction, but fragmentation of language, turning one voice into many, preventing collective awakening. In this sense, Babel itself is a crown, a cosmic diadem reaching toward heaven, struck down and shattered into shards. Its ruins are not only bricks, but syllables, tribes, bloodlines scattered across the earth. Colors themselves speak the serpent's tongue. Crimson for bloodline, the currency of legitimacy. Gold for divine right, the illusion of eternal sovereignty. Black for curse, the shadow that stains entire lineages as damned or chosen. Each coronation, each royal banner, each family crest is painted in these hues. They are not aesthetic choices, they are ritual symbols. It's echoes of Babel and Eden, reinscribing the serpent crown across centuries. Even numbers enter this symbolic language. 3 sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, Japheth, as archetypal triad, division disguised as destiny. 70 nations descend from them, the symbolic totality of humanity fractured. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls in Revelation echo this architecture of completion and breaking. Numbers are not mere counts, they are codes, structuring the ritual of bloodlines as surely as any crown. Heraldry reveals the same pattern. Coats of arms often feature serpents, dragons, or crowned beast symbols of ancient bloodlines encoded into imagery passed through generations. To modern eyes, they are quaint designs. To those who know, they are contracts in symbol form. A serpent biting its own tail. The Orabara signifies eternal cycle, bloodline without end. A dragon beneath a crown signifies dominion by blood, conquest sanctified. Every crest is a silent sermon. The language of symbols is powerful precisely because it bypasses reason. A crown seen on a head inspires submission without words. A serpent carved into stone evokes awe or fear without doctrine. A tower rising toward the sky becomes hubris or hope depending on who speaks, but always it shapes imagination. The serpent crown, then, is not only an artifact, it is a symbolic grammar, a set of images designed to bind humanity into obedience through sight and ritual repetition. Yet symbols can be inverted. The serpent condemned in Genesis is also the serpent who opened eyes. The crown sanctified by priests is also the crown that enslaves. Babel, cursed as hubris, may also be Babel as lost unity. Awakening begins by reclaiming the language, by seeing symbols not as commands but as ciphers. To recognize the serpent crown in every coronation, every flag, every cathedral, is to unveil the system hidden beneath aesthetics. The forbidden truth is that humanity has always lived beneath this language, often without recognizing it. Every anthem sung, every crest unfurled, every crown displayed is a ritual repetition of the same grammar. Legitimacy through blood, sovereignty through serpent wisdom, unity forbidden. To awaken is to speak this language consciously, to decode rather than obey. For once you see the crown upon the serpent's head, you can no longer pretend it is merely decoration. It is the script of history itself. Blood has always been the oldest currency, long before silver coins or golden crowns, which is the one currency every empire spends freely, the ink that seals contracts, the tide that drowns civilizations and fertilizes dynasties. In the story of the serpent crown, blood is not background. It is the axis on which the entire system turns. The flood itself is written in blood, though described as water. It is a ritual of annihilation, a purge that erases one generation of bloodlines and preserves another. Noah's family becomes the vault, the ark not merely of animals and seeds, but of blood. Shem, Ham, and Japheth emerge as living coins in the oldest transaction tokens through which humanity will be divided, scattered and controlled. Every bloodline afterward is an account opened in their names, every nation an extension of their veins. From this point, blood becomes the marker of destiny. Shem's descendants are cloaked in blessing, Ham's in curse, Japheth's in expansion. But these are not neutral genealogies. They are hierarchies inscribed in flesh. Blessing and curse become hereditary debts, passed like coins through generations. Bloodlines become banks of legitimacy. To belong to the wrong line is to inherit poverty, servitude, exile. To belong to the right is to inherit crowns, thrones, divine right. Blood thus becomes contract, invisible yet binding, determining fate before birth. Empires understood this logic instinctively. Egypt enthroned pharaohs not merely as rulers, but as embodiments of divine blood, their veins pulsing with legitimacy. Royal siblings married to preserve the current, ensuring the serpent crown did not spill into unworthy veins. Mesopotamian kings traced lineage back to gods, claiming descent as title deed. Even Israelite kings were bound by genealogical proof, David's line. Solomon's inheritance, the sacred legitimacy of blood. Without the right blood, no crown could rest secure. Rituals mirror this obsession. Sacrifices spilled blood on altars to seal covenants. Warriors shed blood on battlefields to purchase territory. Kings anointed with oil bloods, symbolic twins, signed their rule in red. Even covenants with God were written in blood. Circumcision as mark on flesh, Passover as lamb's blood on doorposts, atonement sealed with sacrifice. Blood became the medium of every contract, divine or forbidden. Without blood, no pact held power. The curse of Ham is one of the most haunting examples. A single event becomes hereditary stigma, a mark inscribed upon an entire lineage. The system weaponized it, turning blood into debt, ensuring generations carry chains forged by ancestry. The architecture of empire thrives on such curses. They create castes, hierarchies, destinies that justify conquest and slavery. Through blood, power is perpetuated, not by merit but by inheritance. As the serpent crown whispers, legitimacy is in your veins, and nothing can change it. But blood is not only literal, it becomes metaphorical currency as well. It's the time you give, the labor you expend, the suffering you endure. These are all extractions of blood. When empires demand taxes, when priests demand obedience, when dynasties demand loyalty, it is your blood they are harvesting, piece by piece. Even today, when surnames trace genealogy, when passports codify ancestry, when DNA tests reduce identity to percentages, the ritual persists. Blood remains the ledger in which humanity's worth is calculated. The serpent crown itself is the ultimate blood relic. In Egypt, serpents adorned crowns as guardians of legitimacy. In medieval Europe, serpentine engravings slithered across diadems. In hidden lore, the serpent crown is not metal at all, but covenant. A spiritual diadem coiled around humanity's destiny. Whoever claims it wields not only authority, but the power of blood. Itself the ability to define which lines are cursed and which are chosen. The irony is that blood was meant to be life, a sacred current flowing equally in all, yet the system inverted it, making blood the chain. Instead of unity, it became division. Instead of life, it became debt. Instead of liberation, it became destiny. Blood as currency is the cruelest trick, making the very essence of life into the medium of control. And yet hidden in the imagery of apocalypse and myth, blood testifies against the system. The martyr's blood in Revelation cries out, not as payment but as witness. The flood itself, remembered as water, reveals the cycle of purge and reset, the ruthless efficiency of control through bloodline. Every empire soaked in blood eventually collapses beneath its weight. The rivers that flow red are receipts, not coins or cords of crimes too vast to conceal. To awaken is to see blood not as currency but as revelation. The crown that coils on royal brows is not sanctity but contract, not blessing but bondage. The genealogies that divide are not divine order but architecture of control. Blood is not detid as evidence. Evidence that humanity has been bound to the serpent crown, generation after generation, paying a price it never agreed to. The forbidden truth is that blood has always been the oldest currency, but it need not remain the last. Once you recognize the ledger, you can refuse to pay. Once you see the crown, you can strip its coils from your head. The river of blood need not flow forever. It can dry, leaving only the testimony of what was and the possibility of what could be. Every dynasty, every empire, every priesthood survives not only by swords and blood, but by contracts, some written in stone, others carved into flesh, and still others whispered through ritual. The serpent crown is not simply a jewel or a mythic relic. It is the symbol of an eternal pact. To wear it is to accept a covenant older than Babel, one that binds rulers and subjects alike to an architecture of obedience sealed in blood. The first pact is visible in Genesis itself. After the flood, God makes a covenant with Noah, rainbow in the sky, a promise of preservation. But beneath that divine contract lurks another, the division of his sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, into destinies that are not choices but obligations. This is not blessing alone, it is conscription. Shem is bound to sacred lineage, Ham to curse, Japheth to expansion. Their descendants inherit terms they never signed, caught in an ancestral contract written in water and sealed in blood. The Tower of Babel enacts another contract, this time collective. Humanity sought unity, a single tongue, a single project to reach heaven. But the scattering of languages becomes not only fragmentation, but binding clause. You will never again unite in such a way. Division itself is codified into law. The architecture of empire thrives on this pact, ensuring nations remain fractured, bloodlines distinct, unable to awaken to their shared origin. The crown's coils tighten with every scattered syllable. Empires understood how to harness these contracts. Pharaohs invoked divine pacts when they crowned themselves with serpents. Kings of Israel sealed contracts with oil, an anointing that substituted for blood, drawing legitimacy from covenantal language. Medieval monarchs made coronations into legal theater, bishops placing crowns while reciting formulas that declared the king, chosen not by people, but by God. Each ritual was a renewal of contract, ruler as keeper of covenant, subjects as bound participants. But there is a darker pact, the forbidden crown itself. Legends whisper that dynasties preserved their power by claiming descent from serpent blood, whether in Egypt's Urias, Mesopotamia's dragon emblems, or Europe's claims of Merovingian bloodlines descended from the fish or the serpent. These were not casual myths, they were assertions of pact. Our blood is marked, our crown is sealed, our right is eternal. The serpent crown is the visible seal of that contract, the diadem that whispers. Sovereignty flows not from consent, but from covenant written in veins. Contracts also appear in Inversion. The church reframed rebellion as breach of covenant, heresy as breaking contract. To question lineage, to reject divine right, to resist rulers was not merely political defiance, it was covenantal treason. In this way, law and theology fused into one architecture of contract. Every rebellion became framed not as justice but as sin, every refusal not as liberation but as damnation. The people were not only subjects of empire, they were bound debtors in a contract written on their own bloodlines. The rituals of pact still echo. Coronation ceremonies are not simply crowning, but contractual renewals, re-signing ancient covenants in public theater. Even modern oaths of office, sworn on Bibles or constitutions, are echoes of this logic. They are pacts of legitimacy, binding rulers to symbols and subjects to obedience. And every surname, every genealogy test, every claim of royal blood is an echo of the forbidden pact, a contract written in family lines and believed without question. The genius of these contracts is that no one remembers signing them. Children are born into them, inheriting debts from ancestors they never met. Nations are chained by covenants written in myths they no longer believe, yet still obey. The serpent crown needs no lawyers. Its contracts are invisible, enforced by ritual, language, symbol. To live within its system is to live under terms you never agreed to. Yet Apocalypse, the unveiling whispers of another possibility. If these contracts were never freely entered, can they be binding? If the crown is a symbol of pact, can its coils be broken by refusing the terms? The forbidden text suggests yes. The Gospel of Thomas, the visions of Enoch, the whispers of Gnostics, all point toward awakening as contract breaking. To see through the illusion is to nullify the pact. To reclaim the serpent as wisdom, not curse, is to invert the inversion. This is the true fear of the system. Not rebellion with swords, but rebellion of perception. For once humanity recognizes the contracts as forged, the architecture collapses. If legitimacy is only a symbol, the crown loses its power. If bloodline is only myth, its curse dissolves. If the pact is exposed as fraud, obedience is no longer binding. The serpent crown remains a relic, but its covenant disintegrates. The forbidden truth is that the greatest pact was never with God, but with power. The serpent crown is the sigil of that contract, passed through kings and empires, renewed in ritual, believed by generations. To awaken is to tear it apart, to refuse the terms, to realize you were never debtor, never subject, never bound. The pact was always theirs, never yours. Every structure of domination eventually learns the same technique. It is not enough to chain the body. The mind must be inverted. What was once freedom must be renamed rebellion. What was once wisdom must be branded as curse. What was once unity must be twisted into hubris. This is the inverted moral code. and at its heart stands the serpent crown. The Bible itself gives us glimpses of this inversion. In Eden, the serpent offered knowledge and awakening of sight, an unveiling of truth. But the story was retold as fall, knowledge reframed as sin, awakening recast as disobedience. In Babel, humanity sought unity, a single tongue, a tower to bridge heaven and earth. But the narrative was inverted. Unity became arrogance. Tower became blasphemy. The scattering of tongues became divine justice rather than the shattering of human power. At every point where humanity reached for vision or unity, the story flips, turning liberation into transgression. The same inversion bleeds into Bloodlines. Shem, Ham, Japheth, 3 sons, 3 destinies. Shem's is sanctified, Ham's cursed, Japheth expanded. But beneath this division is an inversion. The curse of Ham becomes justification for servitude. The blessing of Shem becomes chain of priesthood. Japheth's expansion becomes sanctified conquest. Blood itself, meant to signify shared humanity, is recoded into hierarchy. Its entire peoples inherit shame or privilege without choice, their fates inverted into debt or destiny. The serpent symbol itself was not spared. In Egypt, it crowned Pharaoh's symbol of divine protection and wisdom. In Mesopotamia, it was associated with renewal and cosmic power. Across Asia and the Americas, the serpent brought civilization, guarded temples, signified immortality. But in the inverted moral code of later theology, the serpent became Satan, ultimate deceiver, eternal enemy. The very image once used to crown kings and guard temples was demonized, stripped of wisdom, recast as corruption. The crown became curse. Why is inversion so effective? Because it hides domination inside morality. If unity is hubris, division becomes virtue. If knowledge is sin, ignorance becomes holiness. Bloodline is cursed, obedience to hierarchy becomes survival. The system thrives when victims believe their chains are blessings. In this way, the serpent crown does not merely rest on brows, it coils in the conscience, teaching humanity to fear its own awakening. The inverted moral code extends into ritual. Sacrifice, once testimony of empire's cruelty, becomes sanctified payment. Coronation, once the flaunting of blood privilege, becomes divine ceremony. Babel's scattering, once fracture, becomes sacred order. Each inversion is rehearsed through ritual until memory itself is rewritten. Children are born into stories that tell them to fear unity, to distrust knowledge, to obey bloodlines. What begins as narrative ends as instinct, but beneath the inversion, cracks remain. The serpent in Eden did not lie. Your eyes will be opened. And they were. Babel's unity did not collapse by weakness, but by scattering imposed from outside. The blood of martyrs in Revelation does not purchase forgiveness. It cries out as witness against empire. Forbidden meaning whispers through the cracks. The very things branded as curse are the seeds of liberation. Knowledge awakens. Unity empowers. Blood testifies. The crown enslaves only by inversion. This is why forbidden traditions, Gnostic gospels, apocryphal texts, esoteric schools preserve different readings. To them, the serpent was teacher, not tempter. Babel's scattering was tragedy, not justice. Bloodline was architecture of control, not divine order. These voices were silenced because they flipped the inversion back, reclaiming symbols as liberating rather than damning. The church and empire could not allow such readings to spread. The architecture of obedience depended on fear, not freedom. To awaken is to see the inversion clearly. The moral code we inherited, fear knowledge, obey bloodlines, submit to fragmentation, was not divine, but designed. The serpent crown is not curse but cipher, revealing the system that thrives on inversion. When you flip the code back, the illusion falters. Knowledge becomes liberation, unity becomes power, blood becomes witness, the serpent becomes wisdom once more. The forbidden truth is simple, yet terrifying for the system. What has been demonized may be sacred. What has been cursed may be crowned. What has been called rebellion may be humanity's only path to awakening. The inverted moral code is not unbreakable. It is only believable. And once belief dissolves, the crown loses its coils. Rituals are the stage where the serpent crown is rehearsed again and again. They are not merely ancient ceremonies of coronation or sacrifice. They are woven into the fabric of everyday life, shaping how humanity understands power, obedience, and destiny. The genius of the system is that its rituals are everywhere, hiding in plain sight. Repeating the same lesson: blood decides, crowns legitimize, unity is forbidden. Consider coronation itself the most obvious ritual. In Egypt, the pharaoh's crown was adorned with the urious serpent, its raised head spitting fire, a guardian of legitimacy. In medieval Europe, kings processed barefoot into cathedrals, kneeling as bishops placed crowns upon their heads while choirs sang of divine right. In Asia, dragon thrones and serpent motifs signified that rulers were more than men. They were embodiments of bloodline covenant. Each coronation was not a political act alone, but a ritual reenactment of an ancient pact. The crown descends. The bloodline continues. Legitimacy is sealed anew, but rituals seep far beyond thrones. In temples, sacrifices spilled blood on altars, reenacting humanity's indebtedness. The lamb, the bull, even the scapegoatal tokens in the blood economy. Each ritual told the same story. Blood must be shed to keep covenant intact. These sacrifices were not mere offerings. They were ritual signatures on a contract humanity never drafted. To refuse was to break covenant. To comply was to renew bondage. Language itself became ritual. The repetition of genealogies: Shem begat Arphaxad, Ham begat Cush, Japheth begat Gameriads, not like history, but like incantation. To recite them was to reaffirm the architecture of bloodlines, to keep alive the hierarchy of curse and blessing. Even today, family names, passports, DNA tests are secular liturgies of lineage. To declare ancestry is to participate in a ritual older than writing, one that binds identity to blood. Rituals echo in art and symbols. Coats of arms display serpents, dragons, crowned beasts. National flags inherit colors of crimson and gold, the hues of blood and divine right. Anthems sung before battles or games rehearse the unity of tribe, while echoing the fragmentation of Bible unity within. Every emblem, every song is not mere decoration, but a ritualized inscription of power. Even modern politics performs the crown's liturgy. Oaths of office, sworn on Bibles or constitutions, or coronations stripped of diadems. Handshakes, signatures, anthems, all rituals that encode obedience into law. Dynasties of presidents, prime ministers, and corporate empires echo royal succession, repeating the ritual of bloodline under a new guise. Elite families still guard lineage, ensuring marriages keep wealth and power enclosed. The serpent crown may no longer gleam in gold, but it coils invisibly in boardrooms and parliaments. The most insidious rituals are psychological: to teach children to obey surnames, to honor blood, to fear rebellion, to memorize genealogies. These are everyday performances of the serpent crown. School ceremonies, hymns, national pledges, all rituals of obedience rehearsed until they become instinct. The serpent's coils are not only on crowns, they wrap around the imagination itself, binding identity through endless repetition. And yet rituals are double-edged. The same repetition that enslaves can also liberate when meanings shift. To reinterpret coronation as theater exposes its emptiness. To see sacrifices as unnecessary blood reveals the fraud. To reclaim serpent symbols as wisdom rather than curse flips the ritual. Even the act of retelling these myths in a forbidden way as we do, here's a counter-ritual. Breaking the cycle by unveiling the script. This is why forbidden traditions cultivated their own rituals. Gnostic sects performed baptisms, not into guilt, but into knowledge. Mystery schools invoked serpents as guardians of wisdom. Folk rituals crowned leaders not by blood, but by merit, community, or vision. These alternative liturgies threatened the architecture because they re-scripted the crown. If legitimacy is not bound to bloodline, the system collapses. If rituals awaken rather than enslave, the serpent crown loses its grip. Rituals everywhere testify to the same truth. The serpent crown is not artifact but performance. It survives because humanity repeats it, generation after generation, often without awareness. To awaken is to see that every coronation, Every anthem, every contract is a stage. Every gesture part of a script written long ago. And once you see the stage, you can refuse the role. You can stop reciting their lines. You can break the ritual. The forbidden truth is that ritual does not only build the system. Without rituals, the crown would be a relic, the serpent, a myth, the bloodline, a genealogy in dust. It is repetition that keeps the coils alive. And it is refusal, reinterpretation, awakening that finally unwinds them. To awaken to the system of the serpent crown is to realize that history itself has been staged as ritual, that bloodlines are not mere genealogies but chains, and that crowns are not ornaments, but contracts coiled upon humanity's head. Awakening begins when the veil lifts, and you see that what you thought was providence has always been design. The first shock of awakening is the recognition that you never signed the covenant you were born into. From the moment of birth, your surname, your ancestry, your nation inscribe you into a bloodline you did not choose. You inherit debts, destinies, and hierarchies written long before you. This is the invisible pact of the serpent crown. Blood is ledger, lineage is law. And yet, because you never agreed to it, you can begin to question it. The awakening is the realization that obligation built on illusion dissolves the moment you refuse to believe. The second stage is seeing the inversion. Everything sacred has been flipped. Knowledge demonized, ignorance sanctified, unity punished, fragmentation praised. Bloodlines exalted as holy, while the truth of shared humanity is silenced. The serpent demonized as evil, while its crown is still worn in secret as symbol of legitimacy. Awakening means flipping the code back, reclaiming knowledge as gift, unity as strength, blood as witness rather than debt. The third stage is recognizing the rituals that surround you. From anthems and oaths to passports and family crests, you are daily rehearsing the liturgy of the crown. You are taught to respect lineage, to fear rebellion, to obey symbols. But when you awaken, you begin to see through the performance. The crown on the king's head is not destiny but theater. The anthem is not unity but control. The ritual is not holy but binding. To see this is to step outside the play, to stop acting the role written for you. And then comes the most dangerous realization. The crown is not theirs alone. It has always rested on you as well. Humanity itself is the serpent crown, fractured into Shem, Ham, Japheth, scattered like jewels across the earth. The architecture of evil thrives on keeping those jewels apart, convincing each fragment it is whole, ensuring no awakening to the collective power hidden in unity. But when you recognize that the crown is within you, that the serpent is not curse but knowledge, that your blood is not debt but testimony, the system trembles. Because then the crown no longer binds you, begin to wield it. This awakening is not without terror. To reject the contract of lineage is to walk without guarantees, to face the abyss without crown or covenant. It is to tear down Babel, scattering, to reclaim a unity forbidden for millennia. It is to embrace the serpent's whisper. Your eyes will be opened. But with the terror comes liberation. Fear of curses dissolves. Chains of destiny rust away. The crown that once enslaved becomes a relic, powerless without belief, and yet the system fights back. Every ritual, every sermon, every tradition is designed to prevent this awakening. Fear of apocalypse, fear of heresy, fear of rebellion, these are the veils thrown over your eyes. The architecture does not need to prove itself. It only needs to keep you afraid. But once you see the crown for what it is, fear weakens. You begin to laugh at the rituals, to strip meaning from their symbols, to refuse their contracts. The serpent crown begins to slip. The forbidden truth is this: you were never debtor, never cursed, never bound to their bloodlines. You were currency, yes, but only because you believed the ledger. You were ritual, yes, but only because you played the role. Awakening is the realization that the system survives not on truth, but on participation. And once you stop participating, once you refuse the pact, once you flip the symbols back, the coils loosen. The serpent does not strangle, it awakens. To awaken to the system is to see that the apocalypse is not the end of the world, but the end of their crown. It is the unveiling of the architecture of bloodlines, the exposure of contracts written in lies, the collapse of rituals that no longer bind. The serpent crown falls, and humanity, for the first time, sees itself not as fragments, but as whole. And when you awaken, there is no going back. Vit Int, Part 9 Outro.